welcome to the BMI Podcast. Today we'll jump into kind of like creating and building momentum. Considering it's kind of like start of the year, that's everyone's jumping on that train of different resolutions, setting different goals, going after things. And so I thought I'd kind of start just by setting the landscape of the difference, I guess, or how I think about the difference between motivation and momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can kind of jump in and get your thoughts on that, because especially with the different like journeys that you've been on, you might be able to kind of relate between the two.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I guess typically how I kind of think about it, and before we kind of get into momentum, I think it's important to go into motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've talked about motivation before and the different types. We might have talked about the different types, but do you remember the two different types of motivation?
No, like that we talked about. I can't remember.
I'm not sure if we talked about it on the podcast yet or not.
Yeah.
I know we talked about motivation. I just don't know if we talked about different types. So you got two different types of motivation. You got extrinsic and then intrinsic. Yeah. So extrinsic kind of being anything that is external to us. So if we're motivated by a reward, money, look,
valuables and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you've also got intrinsic, and intrinsic kind of being things that are inherently valuable just to yourself. So purely out of the enjoyment of completing the task. So two different types of motivation. How I typically think about motivation and when people get into achieving goals is that, there's a line in Atomic Habits, and I don't know if James Clear wrote it or he got it from someone else, but motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going.
100%.
And so for me, that's kind of it's almost breaking down the two different forms of motivation. And so quite often it's the extrinsic motivator, the goal, the reward that we're going to get at the end, or the outcome that we're going to achieve, that's actually big enough to kind of get us started on that journey.
Yep.
Outside of that, at some point we need to transition towards it being intrinsic, or again, kind of ideally habitual. But if it's habitual and it's something that we actually enjoy along the road, then that's what's going to make it sustainable long term. And so I think, most of the time, well, recently anyway, a lot of people have kind of been putting down motivation into a scene of kind of like, it's bad to be motivated by external factors.
Yeah.
And it's like, not really. Like, that's probably one of the bigger driving forces that we can have to get us actually kick-started. It's just at some point, most of the time, people don't actually transition that into intrinsic motivation. They solely rely on that reward or that outcome, rather than actually developing the kind of inherent joy in whatever it is that they're doing. So if we take dieting, for example, right? Like, most of the time, people actually just want to achieve the body or achieve the look that they will attain at certain weight or whatever, without actually even caring to enjoy what they're eating in the process. And it's like, well, no fucking shit. You go back to eating all the bullshit you had before because you never actually enjoyed it in the first place. Yeah. And so if we hold on to external motivation and that kind of extrinsic motivation to keep us going, at some point that it'll wear thin. It's not going to be enough to kind of keep us going through.
Motivation never is enough to keep the consistency and like keep you going, because like there's I think like even like Andrew Tate talks about it, like the guy that's who's going to get up in the morning and like if he's motivated to go to the gym, he'll go to the gym. Like, who's going to win between the guy who's relying on motivation to get him to the gym, or the guy who, no matter how he feels, goes and gets the job done? Like, who's going to win in the end? Like, eventually, like, cause, I'm going every day because I know I need to go every day and I got to get the job done. Whereas the other guy's like, he's just not motivated today, and there's just another day you've stacked up against that guy because he's just relying on motivation. There's a lot of days like we don't have motivation to do things, and that's where you sort of need to have that control over, I guess, that inner bitch voice, was what I call it, well, what Andy Frisella calls it. And like, it's true, like it comes in and goes, and then it's just saying like, you've been going really hard lately, you've had 5 days in a row, you've been pushing so hard, like you deserve a break. So I was like, well, actually, do I need to, like, is it a workout that I know I need to get done? Like, especially if you're like building up for something, or you're wanting to, to get to a certain fitness level, or you got a target you're trying to reach. Will taking this day off affect that sort of thing? Maybe it might do. Like, that's when you need to have an honest conversation with yourself and go, okay, maybe I'll take that day off. But realistically, that motivation isn't always going to be there,
Yeah. I mean, like, that's actually probably a good reflection, and I don't know whether or not you've even thought about it, but potentially, how has your motivation changed now? Because I think there's been a shift probably in the last like year and a half, 2 years within you. Have you noticed any shift in motivation, I guess, from previous like weight loss stints that you've kind of talked about, and maybe where you're at currently?
Yeah, like I've I don't know if I would call it like, I don't know, motivation, like, because like the way I look at motivation is like, oh man, I'd watch a video and I'll be like, fuck, that dude's going mean, or like, like the classic David Goggins or something like that, you know what I mean? Like
Ronnie
like,
Coleman before the gym.
Yeah, the Ronnie Coleman, like, do you know what I mean? That sort of thing. That's what I'd like. If I saw a video like that, I'd be like raring to go to the gym. Like, I'm motivated there. I guess where I've been pulling from, I think it's just maybe the determination to get to my end goal. Like, I'm realistic and I see the path ahead of me, like how long this could take, sort of thing, and I know the work that needs to go into it. That's more getting me to the gym every day, or that's me getting outside doing my daily movement. Like, that's sort of being where it's at. It's like, it's kind of, it's almost like a reverse for me now. Like, I kind of can't relax anymore. like I don't know, like some people out there might be the same like that. It's like kind of like, well, can I do it? Like, I've had a couple of days off, like maybe 3 days off in the last 4 months, probably, like full days off of doing nothing. And that's literally because I've been exhausted, and I was like, okay, time for a day off. But like every other day I was just like, well, can I go outside? Can I go walk Leonidas, like, can I go do some small little things? It's like, like, it's not hurting me. I know it's good for me. I tend to pull from that sort of things, like, oh, can I do a little bit more? Am I leaving any stone unturned, sort of thing?
Yeah. I guess I was meaning almost a step back from that. So, like, we all have the reason that we do something is because we're motivated, right? So we want to lose weight. Let's just say we use that for an example. So we want to lose weight purely because, one, we're either unhealthy or we don't like the way we look, or a combination of both. Yeah. Right. And so the motivation there is typically, one, it's obviously extrinsic. So it's I need to better my health, or I need to improve the way I look. Yeah. Or both. Have you found any difference in that starting motivation in comparison to previous weight loss journeys versus even kickstarting this year? Like what that motivation was in prior years versus what that motivation has been now?
For sure. Definitely, like in the past, it was literally just to lose the weight, and I sort of think it wasn't really coming from a health aspect, if you know what I mean. I was sort of like pushing hard in the gym, lifting heavy, like sort of trying to put on muscle over the last 3 to 4 years, like working out hard. But then, like, when I went to go and do a little bit of a cut, I wasn't really, because I was like, oh, I don't want to lose too much for my gains, or that sort of shit, that mindset. Yeah. Whereas, like, definitely, I think in the last 2 years, like playing a bit more like Saturday league and football and stuff like that, playing Saturday and Sunday league, getting into the fitness side of things was more like, okay, I was like, I don't know, maybe it was something in my head going, if I get fit, I'm going to be small. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think maybe that sort of thing, whereas like now there's enough guys out there for me to see, all right, if I can, like, I'm a strong believer of, like, if I see someone do it, I truly believe I can do it as well. Like, I don't sort of like cut myself off, or like sort of, what do you call it, like talk myself down from something. Like, if I see someone literally doing it, I know that all of us are just normal human beings. I see them go, if I see them doing it, I think I can do it. I can do it. It's that's sort of the way I look at it, and I mainly focus on this time around is that motivation coming from just like, all right, I'm not healthy. Like I think I am, or like maybe I've looked pretty decent this year or the other year, But realistically, I was like, well, I hadn't run over. I'm pretty sure I thought of it today when I was going for a run. I was like, I'm pretty sure I didn't run longer than 200 meters, I think. Because I played footy, but like the field's only 90 meters.
Yeah.
So I was like, technically, I reckon I haven't run without stopping other than my fucking warm up for the football, which is around the field. What's that? 250, 300 meters?
Yeah.
If you're cutting corners?
Yeah. Which you always do.
Well, you're warming up with the boys, you know. But like, and that's the thing is like, I was like, I haven't run, and then all of a sudden now I'm just like, oh yeah, sweet. I'm just gonna go and run and give this a crack, you know. And I'm pushing pretty hard in the gym. I'm hoping like it's sort of like it's going to be an experiment for, and it's for the listeners and stuff like that we pick up over throughout the year. They'll be able to sort of I'll be doing sort of checkups and stuff like that and giving you guys updates on how it's been going for me, and I'm pretty confident I'll be able to hold on to a decent amount of size and whatnot. But
so that's probably a good one, especially with fitness, and we can bring diet into that as well.
Yeah.
Are there elements now that you've and so I guess when you thought about fitness in the past, you really saw only the negative side to that, right? So that was everything potentially that could go wrong, i.e. lose my muscle mass from doing fitness. Yeah. And so I don't really want to do the fitness, so I'm going to think about all the things that could potentially go wrong by doing the fitness, which will prevent me from doing the fitness in the first place.
It's an absolute cop-out. You know, like it's just, that's where you just got to have that real conversation with yourself. And and like I've had a lot of people come to me this year and it's, oh, you know, doing running, and I was just like, fuck, like we all operate so below par, like everyone. Like I'm really unfit, I think, in my opinion. Like what let's say I wouldn't say compare myself, or what I see out there or what's around me, you know, especially at Les Mills, there's a lot of fit people there, you know what I mean?
For sure.
And I was just like talking to everyone in my life and stuff like that. It's just like shit, how am I the fittest? I like by you, Mikey. Like out of our, you know, sort of thing, like can run, well, because no one tries to. They probably can,
totally,
but they're not willing to commit to, you know, doing the work, you know, sort of thing. Yeah.
So I mean, how do you think, or how have you started thinking about running now? And there's a reason I'm going down this line. So like, how do you currently think about running? So is it still like, fuck that shit, I'm going to lose my muscle mass, or like what?
I still think it's shit. Like I feel like a loser. Like going to all the runners out there and like, fuck, I'm getting so many of these Insta fucking reels and stuff like of these people just like run club and down around. I'm just like, God, am I gonna turn into that? Yeah. Like, like that's the thing. I was like, am I like oh gosh, like that's quite scary because I definitely look at them and. With a bit of judgment.
Funny thing is, I was even thinking earlier of starting a run club.
Do you want to know something? Like we're doing a run club for the BMI. Like I'm thinking of that, and then we'll run them, and then whoever we have employed, I'll send the cart to the end of our track, and then we can get them to
hydrate and caffeine after.
Yeah, because like it's part of the like, and that's what I've seen from all these videos that I was going to probably talk to you about it, like off the air, and so say, hey, like if we build up a good community on the BMI podcast, you know, like it'll be really really awesome to meet the people, get their like, you know, like for ideas and stuff like that for the podcast and stuff, and then also like I could, you know, serve everyone and give them some coffees, you know. I'll be like, all right guys, let's go run this thing. I'll get our coffee cart to meet us at the end there, and we'll hang out and chill around and, you know, chat for 2 hours. And I was talking to you, I know. I don't want to be the guy that's just like super excited, chilling at a half marathon, like, oh yeah, let's go, like fucking me half marathon, fucking PB, like, I don't think I will get there, to be honest. Like, and I'll be keen to do my own thing, but like that's the thing I think. Where my mindset a little bit different. I'm like, it's just for me. Like I'm trying to run so I can get fit for myself. You know, like I owe it to myself. I think, you know.
Take us there. Like when you're going through those runs, what are you telling yourself before and after, and what's that kind of internal dialogue that you have currently around running?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty hard for me to give the beginner, like, because I've done so much work on my mental resilience. Like it's sort of like for someone starting out, I would say if I started out 3 years ago.
No, this is the perfect comparison.
Yeah. Like if I started out 3 years ago, it would be very, very hard for me to to even think about running 2 kilometers, I would say, whereas now because I've going through 75 hard multiple times, doing sort of fitness like stuff, like footy and stuff like that, I just set myself a goal. You're not stopping for 30 minutes. I didn't even have any program or anything. I was just like, all right, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 30 minutes minimum. And I don't care how far you go, what pace you're at or whatever. One rule, don't stop. And because of the mental resilience I've built up over the past 2 years, it's actually been like, it's not even like a thought pattern to me. I've had obviously you realize when you're running for the first 10 minutes, that's the hardest part. And like getting through that, it's like, oh man, my first run, I remember like a couple parts of my legs were like sort of starting to seize up a little bit, and I just said, oh well, you told yourself don't stop, so like either slow down or get over it. And then literally like 4 or 5 minutes go by, like I was listening to a podcast and just sort of thing, 4 or 5 minutes goes by, and then the pain sort of just slowly goes away.
What wins does it give you currently then? I'll try to rephrase the question because I want to come back to the punchline. Yep. What wins does running, and when you go for your runs or you've finished your runs, what does that give you now? Like,
it's definitely getting easier. Like I would say, like the first 2 to 3 weeks, I think were just like no progress, if not backwards. Like just because
Did you have to push through those, or were you still motivated because you knew there was something coming?
No, I definitely had to push through those. Like, there was a few sore days because, like, keep in mind, like, so there's guys that will start doing running. I haven't had a day off the gym this year, so, like, I think I had one actually. And that was forced because it was a public holiday and, like, it closes early at 7. And I was out doing other physical activity, like walking around the mountain, I think it was, and I literally had to rush back, but I couldn't make it. But anyway, like, I had to push through those days, and, like, it's quite hard. Like, it was quite hard at the start. Like, and I definitely had to push through. But when you gotta, I don't know, when you tell yourself you're gonna do something, I sort of like, it would be me sort of giving up on myself, sort of thing. If I was just like to stop or something like that on those sore days. But just had to push through.
So, I mean, where I was trying to get to, and maybe this is something for you to pay attention to over the coming weeks and months, because if it hasn't already hit, and when I say it, you might realize, oh, actually, I have obviously started doing that, or it hasn't hit and it's still to come. But at some point, you'll know that it has shifted from externally motivated to internally motivated when you can actually find reasons to do it. You find your own reasons outside of those external factors. So you start to be like, actually, I feel a hell of a lot better after I run. And you tell yourself that, and you're like, holy shit, like I actually feel so much better after I run. And you're like, oh my God, my breathing's improved. My breathing has improved after my run.
And I'd probably say we're probably a week off of that, to be honest. And I probably would have been like,
and I'm getting fitter, and this is actually getting easier. And you start to shift from I have to run to I want to run. And as soon as you start to get that shift between I have to run to I want to run, you go from being just needing to always be motivated into it actually building momentum, and you building your own motivation through momentum because you want to do the tasks. And I think if it doesn't matter what the goal is or what endeavor people are trying to go after, that's something to pay attention to. At what point do you shift from, holy shit, I need a carrot or a stick, I need the boot up the arse, or I need this dingly prize packet at the end of it to kind of keep me motivated? When does it shift from being that into, I actually just want to do this? And as soon as it shifts from then to carrot or stick into I want to do this, you're going to be heading into a path of, okay, cool, now I can actually start to build momentum.
It's definitely heading towards that for sure. Like, it's not it's just I'm quite low in calories, and quite
some dickhead dropped his calories.
Nah, it's self-inflicted. I even asked for it, so
that dickhead was me, by the way.
Like it was harder. Like it's hard to be in love with it at the moment. I would say once I'm able to fuel myself and like not, push myself into the dirt every day, sort of thing. It's definitely become a bit easier though. Like I've definitely adjusted to the calories now that I'm sort of it's the body's. I'm not starving at the end of every day. It was the first 2 weeks I was like pretty hungry at the end of every day, regardless. Yeah.
And I know we've mentioned in previous podcasts 75 hard and also going into live hard. Like, what role do you kind of see now, momentum, one, either having played in 75 hard, and how do you kind of, or what are you thinking about in terms of taking that into live hard in the, next month?
Yep. So it is next week. Starts next week. So first day. So next month I'll be finished. Yeah, momentum is huge. Like I'll even be honest about like I even taking off the Christmas New Year's affected my momentum hugely.
Yeah,
like that's something for you guys out there to probably take note on. Like and keep it in your mind as well. Like even if you take a small break or something like that, but you're kind of got big goals that you've set for yourself and stuff like that. Like it can affect you, and like even the mental, you're like, man, like it's hard. If you kill your momentum, it's not super hard to start back up because you've done it before, but it's still hard every time you have to do it. So like if you're going like for the risk to reward of like, do I cut my momentum on this? If you've got a target or a goal in sight, cutting your momentum is pretty much a no-go if you can, because like that's probably my goal over this next year. Like if it's getting in the way of my goals or anything that I want to try and do, and like if it can fit or something like that, if it's not going to affect my flow or my momentum too much, I'll do it. But other than that, it's pretty much I'm just like non-existent. I'm not ever like I don't want to. I've got targets and goals that I want to hit this year, and I'm not going to let any of it get in my way, because it's just all those small little step-aways, or the momentum slowing, they all add up at the end of the year. Like you if you stuck to a whole year's worth, you can probably achieve 2 years worth where you're not having like those little gaps in between, because they add up, and then you're like, oh, actually I got 1 year's worth of work in that 2 years because I had to keep cutting my momentum.
I do have something to add with that, but we might come back to it if you've got some questions and stuff as well. But keep going into I guess how you're currently using that kind of, or what tips have you used for 75 hard that you could use into live hard now in order to keep momentum? And I know you talked about like the inner bitch.
Yeah.
Like what happens when those days and you have no motivation?
On those days, I would probably say like it would be the daily tasks that I would say that is a part of so I'm not even on the program right now, but because I know what month I have ahead of me, I got back on the program pretty much as soon as I got back from New Year's and stuff like that. It was quite nice. I think I caught up with you as soon as we got back and did a podcast, and it was nice to have be back into that routine and have that normalcy, because like it was lovely and all, like going to the beach and having a walk and like sort of like we're still getting in daily movement and stuff like that, but like
relaxing a bit.
Yeah, relaxing a bit, but it's sort of like I know like what I want to achieve, and like it's sort of like I guess it's hard to relax in your own head when you go, shit, should I be doing something else other than sitting here drinking a beer, having a barbie and stuff like that? Like it's just like it's annoying. Like that's it. So for you guys out there that's wanting to be an entrepreneur and setting high goals and achievements for yourself, be aware that you're going to have that sort of inner mindset of like, oh, you think you're never doing enough, and you're constantly doing like 3 or 4 times more than everyone else. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's
but you're very self-critical.
Yeah, you're very self-critical and stuff like that. But yeah, it's the things that I picked up were just the daily tasks. With a huge one was just like pretty much just, even though I'm still relaxing or was on holiday, I was just all right, you got to go walk Leonidas on the beach, like for one, and then you got to read 10 pages of a book, like like small little things that I set myself, and I like go and do those things, and like if they're on the list, they've got to get done. And I think I told you like I had a terrible January, so like I did my monthly review. Out of the I think it was like is it 29 days in January or 31 days in January, I think it was something like 15 or 16 days as a W of getting them. Like, so the thing was, what I do is I put the 5 tasks down that I want to get done. They don't have to be huge tasks, something like that, like just something that I know is keeping that momentum or the structure, or, like a daily habit that is leading me towards my goals. And so I kept taking a lot of them in there. I kept missing a few of them. So I only got I think it was something like 14, 15 days of that month, which is...
I think I was about the same. When I reviewed my January, I was sitting about 60%. I only had about 60% completion. Everything else was like, move on to the next day, move on to the next day. And I actually saw a good video. It was the creator of the bullet journal.
Oh, yeah.
And he kind of had a different way of approaching it, which was, so he'll set the week in advance.
And you shared that on your newsletter, was it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Plug Beyond Nutrition.
Yep.
If you want to get weekly email.
Yeah. Sign up to the newsletter.
Sign up to the newsletter.
Yeah.
Ends up being, he'll set the week in advance, and then he'll reflect on the week and then set new intentions based on the previous week.
Yeah.
Whereas same thing, I always kind of used to just plan for what I wanted to when I first set those intentions in the first place. So if I set a habit, I'm like, oh yeah, God, I'm just going to hold through with that habit, rather than reassessing, hey, is this actually still a priority?
Yeah.
Is it not a priority? If it's not a priority, what is it now a priority?
Yeah.
So you can kind of readjust along the way, which, I found that quite useful.
Yeah, so that's what's a part of the 75 hard. So you put your, I think, 8 critical tasks, I think it is. And then I think 5 of them are part of the 75 hard, and then you add 3 on. And then pretty much you cycle them out if you do them 4 days in a row.
Yep.
Or 5 days in a row.
Right.
So if you do them 5 days in a row, and it's basically you're trying to form hundreds of good habits of you towards your goals and stuff like that. So you literally, after that 4th day, you're like, okay, did I have to think back to the journal or wherever you wrote it down that you wanted to get it done? If you did it naturally, cycle that out, put in another thing that you think that could potentially think, and work on them. And that's the hard thing about the live hard is those things that you they're non-negotiable. Once they're on the list, you can't.
They're on the list.
Yeah, and then there's a whole bunch to the live hard, which we'll talk about later on and stuff like that. That's why I've been trying to build my momentum up the start of this year, because they say it's the hardest one. It's way harder than 75 hard, they reckon, and I could see why it will be, just because of the extra elements that are added onto it.
Top of are there any tools that you've used or that you are going to use, whether that be journaling or apps or anything like that, that you've kind of found useful that you use in terms of ticking off those daily?
Yes, so I use a journal every day.
Yep.
So even on my days that I'll still go through and I'll give myself an L. So it's the whole idea behind it is you're trying to win the day, and these they don't have to be huge things. I've got sauna in there for one of my things. Abs, so I'm trying to implement abs into my training this year. So I'm trying to do 1 day on sauna, 1 day on abs. So it just adding that extra element to my arsenal, if you know, it's a thing that I've been avoiding as well. I guess this is the year of addressing my avoidance, the things that I've been avoiding over the past year, just to get me to that next level, and it's looking pretty positive for the year. I know that I'm gonna smash my goals because I'm putting in these extra efforts, embracing the difficult, doing the things that I know that I should have been doing this whole time, and actually just getting after it this year, and just sort of don't leave no stone unturned, So
have you felt that momentum pick up already, or is there anything that you kind of want to or are needing to address in order to kind of keep that momentum going?
I definitely, so what is going to be a good telltale of how it all plays out is the running after I finish Live Hard. I realistically I only picked up running to add an extra element of difficulty to my final stage of Live Hard. I just said to myself, I was like, all right, well, it's going to be the full year since the full trying to do the Live Hard. I haven't done it the last 2 times. I was chicken shit, I was too scared. And then I said to myself, well, now I've made it this far, how can I make it even more difficult for myself? Which is pretty stupid, because I've also made it difficult for myself by cutting my calories severely as well. But I don't know, it's sort of that thing you were saying before about that little inner bitch voice that I address all the time, it was telling me like, all right, like what can I do to make me get through live hard easily? And then I was just like, hold on a second, mate. That's not what you're doing this program for.
Wrong framing.
Yeah, your mindset's wrong. Why are you trying to make it easy for yourself so you can just scout your way through to the, like to the finish line? It's like, that ain't the mindset that you're supposed to develop from this, which that's what I sort of picked up on. I was like, okay, all right, what can I do? What's harder? I've already sort of been continuously like doing my outdoor exercising, working out every day. Like my body's feeling quite good, like definitely needs a rest.
Yeah.
But what can I do to make it extra hard for myself? And, that's what I watched one of the 75 Hard podcasts with Andy Vasella and another guy, and he did running, and he was big guy, but he ran every day as well. And I said, well, I can do that too. I want to get fitter. I was like, being me and you doing this podcast, and like I've no better time to do it when I've got someone to
pick the brain
on the other side. That's it.
Like, what do you say to that person, or maybe it's even yourself, when you kind of get to that place where you're seeing the first little obstacle or hurdle kind of come about, and you're getting ready to jump over it, or maybe you've had a setback, like you said, within the first month, that kind of thing. Like, what do you say to that person, or what do you say to yourself in order to kind of like keep pushing through?
I would say if you've got momentum, try to not let it go. If you're on the other side of it, where you've lost some momentum, the motivation isn't quite there, I would say do your best to think about why you started. I would say, like, think about why you actually started, and then also try to think about the small wins that you've already had, and like try to think back to when you started and go like, far out. For an example, like my first run, it was like, I think I got 3.8 Ks, and then I was dying after that. Today, only 4 weeks later, did a zone 2 at 4.4. It was extra 5 minutes today because I've just gone up to 35 minutes, but I was like 4.5 Ks or something like that at zone 2, and I was just barely sweating. Like, it had a bit of a sweat on me, like, granted it's hot outside, but literally it was easy run. My legs are fine. You know what I mean? Like, that'll be one where I was like, shit, like, it's crazy to see, like, if you stay consistent and, you stick to something, even though it's hard it's not always going to be hard, know? And just thinking back to that starting point, yeah.
I always think small wins are critical because, most of the time we look for the biggest win and we want that big reward, that big win that we can get from things, rather than actually acknowledging all of the small wins that we're actually having along the way.
Yeah.
And I think it's really the accumulation of those small wins which actually makes it enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like, if you're holding out for dear life for that big win, that big carrot at the end, I'm going to run the marathon, or I'm going to lose 50 kilos or whatever it is, right? Like, if you're holding out for that big win, it's a fucking long time coming.
Yeah. That's why I'm not really zoning in on that. And that's like when we were talking about before we started, like I don't want to be that guy, or like at the marathon like start line, sort of thing. I don't want it, like, that's not what I'm actually doing it for.
And who knows down the line, it's the what are the wins that I can get today that can help me reinforce doing it again tomorrow, rather than necessarily just, again, like, riding on this drive that is inherently a fire that's going to burn out at some point, when it's purely focused on something 10 years down the line.
That's it.
And there was something that you said around, the losing momentum and having a barrier to restart, which, I always think about kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And so the further the more and more you kick the can down the road, the harder and harder it is to restart.
Yeah.
And so, but that quite often is the case because you've put
and that's
whatever...
where people go to... They finish, they stop there, right?
Yeah, and the barrier to restart is often so high because they've got optimals sitting on that restart line.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if I can't do what's best, I'm not going to do anything. It's like, no, that's the wrong attitude.
Yeah, it's the wrong attitude.
It's like, that in itself is the one thing that's actually stopping you from getting started. You're literally kicking your own fucking can down the road.
Yeah.
Like, in order to start again, half the time you actually need to reduce that optimization.
Yeah.
What is just the one thing that I can do that's going to at least, that I will do, that will enable me to get back on track? And it doesn't have to be huge, but that might be your win for the day.
Yeah.
And I know it's a little bit different in comparison to 75 hard, because in 75 hard, obviously you do it or you don't do it.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing 75 hard, well, then you don't have to hold yourself to that standard either.
Yeah.
You can reduce it to get started, because if the one thing that's preventing you from getting started is the fact that you don't think you can do all of it, well, just fucking do something.
Yeah, yeah. It's like versus like we were saying before, I'm doing a 30-minute run or something like that, and then I stop for like 2 weeks or something. Let's say I have a bad injury, like, and then I'll be like, most people's mindset will be like, I want to go back to 30-minute running. It's like, well, you haven't been training, mate. Like,
that's it.
What you need to start on is 2 15 minutes.
Yeah.
In the day, like separated from each other, so you have enough time to recover. Like, but they're going, well, like you're saying, if I can't do that, then I'm not going to do it at all. So well, then you're making your situation even worse, because you're not actually putting in any work. You go from putting in all the work into putting in none of the work, and then potentially throwing in the towel too early.
Yeah. And I think in general, like, being healthy is a long-term game.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are the things, if we're always waiting on the ducks to be aligned so everything is perfect for us to get started, like we're always playing a game of black and white. Like, health is somewhere in the gray, and it's like, how many somewhat better grays can we kind of get?
Yeah. And
it's like, accumulate those wins, and that's why I think the small wins super important. Super important.
Yep. You got any more questions? No worries. Well, I was thinking about like asking you, what sort of momentum is like for you? Like, what was the year like for you? You were sort of saying how you actually only got about 60% of your days as well as wins and stuff like that. Do you find it the same? Like, you'd rather keep it than lose it, sort of thing?
Yeah, like I actually end up putting myself not putting myself on a pedestal, but I hold myself to a high regard. And so often when I know that I'm not completing, we end up not turning up because we know that we're not turning up anyway. Yeah. And so that, again, it's like kicking the can down the road. Yeah. It's like I always journal, and so I often don't go back to the book, and I don't track the habit when I know that I'm not doing the habit. And it's like, this is actually the time where you need to use the book to reinforce that you're not doing the habit and address whether or not you still want to do the habit. And so I actually kind of like, I almost hold myself almost to a too much of a high standard, and so let that kind of get the better of me instead of, and that's kind of what got me to the place of kind of thinking, hey, like, actually, okay, one, is this still something that is meaningful or that you want to continue doing?
Yep.
Is this, and what does that currently look like? What is a smaller version of that you can still get the win on, even on your worst day? And so what can I do even on my worst day? Asking that question. And so if I can say, okay, well, if shit's hit the fan, but I can still do X, Y, Z, I can still go for a 5-minute run, or I can still go for a 10-minute run. I can still go and have 3 servings of protein in a day. I can still drink water. Like, if those are the things that I can still do, irrespective of whether days turn to shit or not, start there. Yeah. Because even turning up, and this is what's happened already, even turning up on the days where I've kind of reduced the scope, it still gives you a win. Yeah. It gives you that small win. And so because it gives you the small win, you want to turn up again. Yeah. And then it's that continuing of turning up that inherently momentum is built. Oh, huge. So like I saw not Matt Graham. I don't know if you know him. Like he's got a podcast, and he's sort of our age or a bit younger than us. And he's sort of similar sort of path, like to me, like he's had a bit of a, like just being lazy, sort of being a useless human, like not living up to the optimal standard. You know what I mean? And he was talking about, he just made a post yesterday. It's like, you don't need to move the needle an inch every day, but if you can do everything you can to move it 1 millimeter, it'll eventually add up. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I resonated with that, because I was like, I definitely had some of those days where I was like, man, like I'm pretty low, like pretty lethargic, so like quite hungry, like like those. I'm in that period right now. It's like, but I'll tell you what, I'm still super proud of myself by the end of the day, because I've still gone out and done all of those things. Yeah, I came up short on some of the sort of things, and they sort of play in my mind, because I know I was like, hey, you don't get any of those, bro. Like, you got like start zoning in, start fine tuning your craft, because you got to be able to
to tick every single box off by the end of the day for 30 days straight coming up soon, you know, like.
And I think like even so for again the people that aren't necessarily doing 75 hard, like just purely the notion of start again.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing if one day has fucked up, if your shit's hit the fan and for whatever reason you couldn't get your shit done, start again.
Yeah.
Like, and again, if that start again, if there's too much of a bigger barrier between starting again because you've put something on a pedestal, everything needs to be optimal for you to do that. Change the mindset, change the frame. Like, what can I do that will still give me some win? And just do that. Just start again right there. And you'll find within a week or a month, you'll be back to being wherever optimal was.
Yeah.
But you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Like, it probably wasn't going to work at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
So reduce it down and put something in place so that you can keep momentum. And the only way to keep momentum is just not kick the can down the road. Face up to it.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe it'll be good to sort of have a little bit of, like, have you had a moment where you've lost momentum and like a quite a crucial moment where you're like, shit, and then like how did that affect you, and like what did you do to sort of get back onto that momentum, like train?
I mean, the first one that pops to mind is getting COVID while I was trying to train for the marathon.
Yep.
Just purely because it's probably the most recent one and outside of the New Year period as well, similar to you.
Yep.
But at that point, I would have been training linearly, like progressing for probably coming up to, I'd say at least 6 months.
Yep.
So I'd seen nothing but non-stop progression.
Yep.
From starting running all the way up to when I got COVID, which was probably about 6 months down the line.
And that's the easy part, right? Like when when you got nothing but progression, like that's actually like not really when you actually are relying on motivation or anything like that. It's because it's just right there in front of you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And so coming back, or basically hitting a fucking brick wall, coming back and just feeling completely zapped and not exactly like yourself, you know, like there was no way that I could run the distance or the speed at which that I was doing prior.
Yeah.
No chance at all.
You were just comparing yourself to yourself,
but
right?
I was
like, yeah.
comparing it back to then. And at that point, it kind of became about, if it wasn't about internal enjoyment, like by that point, I think I had 6 months to actually enjoy the process of running. Like the benefit for running was kind of getting out of my own head. It was feeling accomplished after the run. It was the one part of the day as well where you could kind of regain a sense of control, and it's just you and the road kind of thing.
Yeah.
If I hadn't developed that, I think it would have been fucking hard.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of hone back on changing from external motivation to internal motivation. Now, again, like, of course, that marathon was still there, but I think I probably could have just inherently continued to kick the can further down the road until it probably got about 2 months away from the marathon and be like, oh, fuck, now I got to train hard.
Yeah.
If I hadn't developed intrinsic motivation prior to getting COVID. Afterwards, like, the first run, I felt it. But it had nothing to do with how hard that run felt. It just came back to, okay, this was almost a realization of you're not where you were. Change something. Like, you don't have to have the ego and run as fast as what you were running, which was my probably biggest issue.
Yeah.
But it was the fact that actually I could still just go out and run, and I've now acquired my me time back.
Yeah.
You know, I've acquired that time where I'm just thinking about nothing and or everything all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I was able to kind of get back into the swing of things and not hold myself to the expectation of I can't do this because I can't run as fast as what I was running.
Yeah.
But that's almost why I was trying to really refine the change from extrinsic to intrinsic motivation, because without it, that restart barrier is just so high.
Yeah.
You know, again, like I would have had to have waited all the way until the ducks had aligned and it was like, holy crap, the pressure of running a marathon in 8 weeks' time got to me.
Yeah.
For me to be like, okay, cool, I'll start again.
Yeah.
I could start earlier purely because that restart barrier wasn't there. The restart barrier is actually, there's no barrier. I can just go out and enjoy this run.
Yeah, yeah.
And so thinking and changing that internal dialogue.
Yeah, move the goalposts a little bit.
That's it. Inherently just helps you to think about or reframe why it is that you're doing what you're doing in the first place. And I mean, like, so even bring to this year, for example, like for a multitude of reasons, there's been excuses as to why I can't do certain things.
Yeah.
Now, you can take those as they are. They're either legit or not legit, kind of irrelevant.
Yep.
The tasks weren't done.
Yeah.
Now, if the tasks weren't done, do I still put myself to that standard and continue to kind of like criticize and critique myself the whole time, which I would have done in the past? I think reflecting on last year's journal, I kept the same habits for about 3 months stubbornly, 3 months before actually changing them.
Yep.
It's like, why the fuck are you doing that? Like, all you're doing is making yourself feel worse. Like, pick something different.
Yeah.
Like, it's evidently not a priority.
Yeah.
Accept that, acknowledge that it's not a priority, and focus on something that is a priority. And so it was just that kind of...
I feel you there. I'm
Right.
guilty of it.
It's like, change the critical voice into, okay, cool. Actually, what you're being critical on is what is my priority. And once you've outlined what your priority is, well, there should be no negative feeling around that, because that's what you want to spend your time on. What you want to spend your time on, cool, go after that. What are some habits that I can do? And again, what can I do on my worst day around those to kickstart that momentum again? And just purely changing that from last month to this month, actually taking off about fucking 5 of the habits that were on there, refining it down to what's actually truly important, already so much easier. And so because it's easier, I'm gaining momentum, and now I actually want to look for other areas to add more.
Yeah, to increase the momentum.
Instead
of like you're taking away 5 things, you're going to add 2 more back in, but they are actually more self-serving towards the mission, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's purely because it's actually it aligns more with the priority.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think we both would probably agree, like there's a huge importance on momentum, we, just for you guys out there, like it's sort of like maybe like we're earlier on in our journey and stuff like that, but what we do realize is we've both accomplished a few things. We've had like a few highs for sure, like and we've noticed the moments, we've talked about it a lot in private conversations, stuff like that, like how much losing that momentum has actually affected us, sort of thing, like or the journey, or like let's say the end result, sort of thing. Like it's if we could put it like, plant a little nugget in your head, sort of thing, like maybe just like literally just momentum is so key, you'd rather keep it instead of lose it. Like
that ended up being a lot of almost my whole business philosophy, because a lot of the diet culture recently, but even as back as probably 20 or 30 years, let's be honest, is black and white.
Yeah.
Like it's do this or don't do anything. You're either on a diet or you're not dieting, you're eating fuck knows what.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's that black or white dichotomous kind of behavior that kind of needs to change. And that's exactly the same with how people address most of their goals. You know, they go into their goals and they're so motivated that they go all in on their goal, which is sweet.
Yeah.
But what happens when you go all in is there's normally an all out.
Yeah.
And if you don't refine what you actually enjoy and find things that you enjoy along the way, that all out is going to come sooner rather than later.
Yeah. You definitely want to make sure that you're just staying on the track, like don't lose the path,
Yeah. And especially if that like self-critical kind of talk inherently is the one thing that's stopping you from getting back on the path. It's like, get out of your own way.
Yeah.
What is the thing that you can do and that you actually want to do? Stick with that. Build momentum from there.
We're all going to win, brother.
That's it.
That's it.
Amen.
All right. I think that'll do us for today. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening.